We are about to chat with a mom who has overcome the hardest thing and is sharing the story with the world. Join us today on Fostering the Future.
Welcome to the Fostering the Future podcast, a show about all things child welfare, dependency, adoption, and foster care. Here are your hosts, veterans in the world of child welfare, Jack and Kat.
We believe that every human has incredible and equal value regardless of what side of the courtroom we sit on. We hope that everyone feels welcome and accepted here on Fostering the Future.
Make sure you follow us on Facebook or Instagram as Fostering the Future Podcast, or check us out on our website at fosteringthefuturepodcast.org.
This is Jack, and I'm here with Mac, and today we are talking with the Mrs. Jackie Polk, a mom who has gone through the dependency system and come out the other side a success story. Thank you so much, Jackie, for taking time to share your story with us today.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. The more awareness I can bring, the better.
Jackie, we are going to dive really deep, okay? What is your favorite drink at Starbucks?
It's a serious question.
It's good. I actually don't drink Starbucks. I'm not into it. I love coffee, but honestly at Starbucks, I get overwhelmed by all the choices and the options. My friend orders I don't even know what it is, brown sugar.
Oat milkshake and espresso.
Oat milkshake and espresso. Yeah, that's it.
Those are the easy ones. The hard ones is when they're no foam, half this, half yeah, it gets wild.
Jack got my kids on Starbucks.
Oh, yeah.
So now there's one right across the street and they'll be like, we need to go to Starbucks for a cake pop. I'm like, thanks, Jack.
Yeah, those pops are good.
How do you take your coffee then?
I just put creamer in it. Nothing fancy.
I mean, that's what I do at home.
I start my day with coffee. I love it. I try not to drink too much throughout the day, but I'll drink it in the morning for sure.
You see a lot of social media accounts that address sobriety. I see a lot of that, but what I've not seen a lot of is parents who've been through the dependency system and have become successful. And I think it's so important that people know that it's possible, that there's these people out there that have also done it and been through it and can empathize with you. So I absolutely love that you have created this social media presence and affected the world in this way, really. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm glad too. It's not something that I really expected, but then I realized once I started sharing that there was a lot of people that would resonate with it and also shed light on a situation. And for lots of people that feel like, maybe they're alone or maybe they can't do it, or, maybe there's shame or guilt applied to attached to their situation. I don't know. I'm just really glad that I've come to a point that I can help them get rid of that and show them that it's okay and we make mistakes, but we get better and that they're not alone in where they're at. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And I remember that when Mac was going through her dependency case, one of the things that I noticed, and I'm pretty sure she shared with me, is that a lot of the people that were going through the same process with her and in the same classes with her were struggling much more and not having a lot of success with their case plans. And so I think when you're going through that and the people around you are just continuing to not make changes, really struggling and not seeing an end in sight, that can be hard to think that it's even possible. The fact that you two have done what you've done is incredible. So many people are not able to be successful, especially long term. So it's a big deal. And it's really important for people to have someone to look up to and say hey, they did it. I can do it. And maybe if I look at some of the things that they did, I can learn from them.
Honestly, I was really when I started following you, it was really great to see somebody else that has been through it. And I'm she's got, I think you've had 6 years I've seen.
Yes, I just hit 6 years.
I was wow. I was I can be there one day.
It's wild because you saying that about me is I never envisioned my life. When I was out using and stuff, I never really pictured my life ever even getting to a year of sobriety. In my brain, that was so far off and impossible to me. And so when I hit a year, I was whoa, what is this? And then all the years afterwards, I'm still just out here. I just never thought that I would be here in this place. And I know what it's like to be on the other end where other people are like 6 years. And I don't think I'll ever have that. You know what I mean? So it's like, I still stay connected to that person that I was and the feelings that I had then, mostly so that I can connect with those people who are in that place.
Mac used to tell me when she went to court, it just makes me so nervous and anxious when I go to court. You felt like everybody was looking at you like you were some horrible person when you went to court.
Absolutely. I still feel like that sometimes when I'm still like, what did I do wrong? Like, am I in trouble? Like, everyone's judging me and I hate it.
Well, I remember when she told that to me, like this naive foster parent, we're here to help these moms. Like, nobody would do that. Nobody's actually giving her dirty looks. So I remember specifically telling you, I know you feel that way, but I promise you, nobody is looking at you like you're a bad person. This can happen to anybody given certain circumstances. And you're fighting hard. Like, they should look at you like they're proud of you. She's like, I'm telling you, they look at me like I'm garbage. When she said that, I'm like, oh, she's just
exaggerating.
Either exaggerating or she's worried they're going to feel that way. So she thinks it's happening, but it's not. And I remember the first time I walked into a courtroom with her side by side, and I wanted to crawl in my body and cry. Like, I want to cry right now thinking about it. The way that the attorneys looked at her, the way the case managers looked at her, I wanted to throw up. They literally are looking at her like she's garbage. She's a freaking human. She is a mother, and she's not skipping court and going out and getting high. She's in here fighting to do the right thing. We all make mistakes, but she's trying to fix her mistakes. And the fact that she can walk in here to try and do that and people are looking at her, it rocked my world and gave me a totally different view.
It's been 6 years since I went through, my program and like all the things that I had to do in court. But you talking about that, like I could literally feel it in my body. Like I could remember and feel how it felt to walk in the courtroom and have like me already feeling a certain way about myself getting into that position. And then having everybody else that doesn't even know me, but looking down on me and treating me a certain way already, like just already writing me off in their minds was like, when you're down and you have that on top of you, you have to be really strong to come back from that and counter that. You have to be strong, and then you have to be stronger against like the judgment and the stuff that like, as if you're not already judging yourself,
Exactly. And you are judging yourself like probably harder than what everyone else is already judging you. And you got like yourself judging you, and then everybody around you is judging you.
I think that both of you give a lot of people a lot of hope. And I think that's really cool.
I don't consider myself somebody special. I just consider my opportunity to share my story special. And so I feel like even if I didn't want to do that, it's something that I have to do. I mean, I'm good with it now, but getting through the uncomfortable feelings of sharing like such intimate, traumatic, emotional things was really hard. And then I realized, but it's for a bigger purpose than just me, and it's serving a lot more people. And so I kind of put myself on the back burner in that sense and didn't share until I was ready. Now I'm here and I'm happy to answer questions, and however I can help, I feel privileged to be able to do so.
Jackie, can you share with us what your immediate family looks like?
So I live with my husband, who's also in addiction recovery. We actually met at the very beginning of our sobriety. So he actually has 1 day more of clean time than I do. That's my husband. So we've been together for 6 years. And then I live with my 8-year-old twins, who are the boys that I was in reunification and had my case with. And then we actually just had our baby in April. So the twins are Leon and Liam, and the baby is Lawson. So we're full of L's over here, full of boys too. I'm surrounded by boys. So,
well, congratulations on your new one.
What was your first experience with the system?
I grew up with divorced parents and, a blended family sort of. So it was very complicated, but most knowledge I had before it was part of my life was just like, I know of foster care, and I know there's kids that live with other families, not their own families, and that people get adopted from foster care. And that was about as much. I had never really given it any thought before my case had started.
Did you live in two separate households, like going back and forth with your parents? And what was that like?
Yeah. So my parents got divorced when I was 6. When I have 4 older brothers, I have 1 full brother. Me and my full brother lived at my mom's house. And then 2 of my older brothers lived at my dad's house. And then 1 older brother lived across the country. And then I mostly lived with my mom and would go see my dad on the weekends, but he lived like 1.5 miles away from us. So, I could see him whenever. He went to all my sporting events. They were always there together. We did holidays and stuff. They were both there all the time. I just lived mostly at my mom's house.
I know my story, so I'm very curious to see, how did you get hooked on drugs? Like, what was your drug of choice?
My first drug of choice was alcohol. My family just drank alcohol on a regular basis. It was everywhere. It was just something that they always had around. Alcohol or addiction runs heavy in both sides of my family, up and down. And alcohol was just something that was always around. My parents were always drinking it. They were drinking it with their friends. My older siblings were drinking it. Like, it was just like something you did. So I started with alcohol first, and I was just thinking I was partying and doing what other kids were doing. But come to find out, I was always the one drinking the most and trying to get the drunkest and drinking the longest. Everybody would be passed out. And then I would be still drinking until I would get sick. And then the next day I'd be like, yeah, let's party again. And I just kind of wrote it off to myself as just partying. And that was up until I was 19. And then my dad actually passed away. It was very sudden, and it rocked my world, and alcohol wasn't enough anymore to like numb that emotional pain, because I just like wasn't ready to, I didn't know how to handle that. I was already like, just like on the edge of like being chaotic and wild and crazy and not really knowing how to handle my emotions or being mature in any way. And then my dad died, and I started smoking weed and then taking pills, and it turned into pain pills, and then the pain pills turned into heroin, and then I was IV using, and it was bad for a while. I actually had to go to a 3-day detox and then a rehab. I overdosed 3 different times, where I woke up to the ambulance and the Narcan shot to even stay alive. So that was intense. And then I actually moved. I grew up in St. Louis, and all of that happened in St. Louis. And I moved down to Oklahoma, which is where I live now, to live with my granddad that my mom was living down to kind of take care of him when he was older. I thought, I'll leave St. Louis and then my addiction will be gone. Well, I came down here and then I got hooked on meth. So it was all of it. And then it was Adderall and Xanax too. Weed, alcohol, is literally whatever was available or whatever I could get my hands on. I was just ready to do as much as I could. So when I finally got clean, it was meth.
I remember whenever I was trying to get off of it, I went from meth to taking Xanax, and I was like, this isn't what it's supposed to be like.
When I finally got clean, I was so ready, and the kids were obviously my driving force. And actually getting off meth was way easier for me than the heroin was physically. So I was grateful for that in a way. I know that sounds really weird, but like my body wasn't as addicted to the drug. It was more of like a mental thing for me. And so yeah, it's all hard. But I want to say that was easier for me.
In your therapy or in your own observation, have you gone back to figure out what the driving force was behind the drinking excessively at the younger age?
Oh, yeah. It made me feel more comfortable. I'm just an anxious person by nature. I'm just very in tune with what's going on around me, and I just soak up a lot of energies to begin with. And so I overthink, and I was just very uncomfortable in my own skin. I think I grew up not really understanding or appreciating who I was, or just being whoever I was, and feeling like I always had to be somebody else. And alcohol made me feel more comfortable. It got rid of that anxious feeling. And I was like, cool, I'm just hanging out and I'm having a good time. And so I think in my brain, I called it just having a good time and partying, when really it just made me feel better. Just made me feel like I could fit in and hang out and be myself. It was like safe for me to be myself if I had alcohol in my system.
I can relate.
I absolutely 100% relate.
We spent a lot of our time talking about anxiety. I think we were talking about it today and yesterday. And you said you started drinking when?
So my first drink was actually when I was 12, which is ridiculous, I know, but I stole it out of my mom's liquor cabinet. It was just there. My mom just had alcohol in the house. She didn't have a drinking problem, but I remember it was gin, which is a horrible thing to drink no matter what age you are. And But all I did, and I think back to that all the time, but like I was 12 and all I knew was that this is what people do to have fun. In my brain, that's what it was. I watched my family do it. I watched the movies do it. It's all over society. Like you drink and you have a good time at any party, you have alcohol in your hand. And it was like, that's just the thing to do. And I was like, well, let's party. And I got really drunk off of like a couple drinks of gin when I was 12 years old. I remember my best friend's mom picked us up when we were going over to her house, and we went over to get like her prescription from Walgreens or something. And in the parking lot, I opened the door and I threw up everywhere. And her mom was like, what's wrong? I was like, I have a migraine. I just throw up when I have a migraine. Like 12 years old, ready to just lie instantly about how much gin I just drank. Like there's a big sign of having a problem right then and there. So that was the first time. And then it was like when I was 14, I was a freshman in high school, always hung out with older people, sophomores, juniors, seniors. And like, that's a cool thing. People get beer and go to a party. And so it was always accessible. It was always there. I think I got a fake ID when I was like 16 that said I was like 29 or something, and it always worked. So it was accessible at a young age, which is wild.
Sometimes I don't know how we get out of childhood. when you were 12 and you started drinking gin. How long did you use substances for?
I was 29 when I got clean. So that's a long 17 years. 14 is like when I really start thinking about it, which is still 15 years. And like when you first start using drugs or alcohol, it's like your brain just like stops developing, or like, you know, you get stunted basically at that maturity level. And this just dawned on me like last weekend. I made a reel about this. When I got clean at 29 with 2 kids, I was literally like a 14-year-old brain in this life, just had to kind of adapt.
And then you have to grow up real fast because all of a sudden you're sober and you've got kids and a family and you got to figure this all out. So I'm assuming it was in relation to your dependency case, but what was it that made you stop using drugs?
Yeah, I wanted my kids. I know that you can't ever really get clean for somebody else. That will never work. But in my situation, I had been wanting to get out of the lifestyle I was in for a long time. I was in an extremely abusive, controlling, manipulative, unhealthy, toxic relationship. And I was in that for years and I was absolutely miserable. And I knew it was the drugs had caused it. The drugs are what the connection was. The drugs kept me there in that place of having nothing and focusing on the drugs. Like I was just over it. I knew that I was meant for more than that for a long time. I knew in my heart and soul that this was not going to be my story. And I always told myself that, you know, even if there was no way to even foresee what my story was going to be, I was like, this is not it, Jackie. Honestly, I think that that's always been the driving force within me, even if it was like literally the smallest amount of hope or belief that that wasn't going to be my story. I feel like that has always been what drove me forward. And then, of course, when my kids were taken away, that's when it was like, okay, that's it. I have to do what I have to do because I just couldn't foresee living a life where I had gone through that and not got them back. I just couldn't picture that or imagine that. And I decided that wasn't going to be my story.
Would you be willing to share with us how you found yourself in a situation that brought your kids into the foster care system?
Yeah. So when they got removed, I 100% was like, somebody told on me. I know I blamed my mom is what I thought, even though she didn't really know what was going on. She kind of did, but didn't really. She lived in another state and I didn't really talk to her much. So it didn't make sense for me to blame my mom, but I felt like I needed to blame somebody for tattling on me is how I felt. And it took me a long time to put the pieces together of actually how it went down and why they showed up at our doorstep. But there was an incident where my mom and my sister-in-law came down to pick me up. I had to like sneak out of the house and like leave to go to my brother's wedding in St. Louis. And I had to sneak the twins out. I had to sneak everything because he was a psycho. When they were doing that and they were in the driveway, I went and got one baby, put him in the car. And then I went up to get the second baby and he had woke up. He was sleeping on the couch and I was like sneaking out and he had woke up. And then all hell broke loose from there. A big fight, like a very traumatic instance where I was like locked in the car. And he actually took like a really long metal pole that was right by the side of the house and picked it up and tried to slam open the driver's side window of where I was. He tug of warred me over the baby, just a really bad situation. And he actually had an assault with a deadly weapon with intent to harm charge and a domestic violence charge against him. And in my battered woman in a domestic relationship, confused on drugs mental state, I actually went to the court and basically told them I didn't want to press charges. Obviously, the cops were there at the whole incident. It was all written and he had charges and all the things. So they knew that there were twins living in the house that all of this just went down in. And then I went to the courthouse and was like, no, it's fine. He didn't mean it. Now, obviously, this mom is not making the proper decisions to keep herself and her kids safe. And so that's what led them to show up at the door. And it took me a long time to really come to that conclusion because it was me. I was the reason. And that's hard to accept in any circumstance, but especially something as big as that. It was hard for me to be like, no, it was what I did.
So at first you blamed your mom for everything?
Yeah.
I still to this day don't know who called on me to make the report. So like I had no one to blame and I was looking for everybody to like, I didn't do it. Somebody did this to me. You guys ruined my life. And then at the end of it, I was like, nope, I did this. Nobody else did it. Somebody called, but I did this. I messed up.
Right. Like they wouldn't have had reason to call if it wasn't something that you were doing, you know, and that's hard. That's a hard thing to accept.
Me and Mac talk about this a lot, but the thing that made me really want to fight for her was when I was talking to Mac on the phone. Like she barely knew me and she's like, listen, I know that I messed up and it's my fault the kids are in care and I just want to be a better mom. So anything you could do to like kind of help me figure that out, like that's what I want to do. And when she said those words, I'm like, oh, she's my girl. Like we are going to do this. Would you mind sharing with us what the actual removal was like and how that felt for you and your kids?
This is fresh today. I actually went through in my brain as I continue to tell my story and do podcast interviews and ask more questions and really think about my story. There's things that I have put off in my brain, like just compartmentalized. I'm just like shove them away or like kind of forgot about. So today I started speaking out loud and going through what happened. It was one case, one situation, but there was actually like 2 removals and both were kind of different for me. The first time they were removed, when they showed up after that incident, they had asked me if I was using drugs. And I said yes. And they said, we know there's domestic violence in the home. They were just like, well, your mom is here from out of state. That's why I blamed my mom. She's like, they said, your mom's here and she's ready to take the kids until you get well. For me, in that moment, I was almost kind of relieved because it was like, okay, I'm not living this double life where I'm living like this, but don't really want to be living like this. Like, this is my chance to get it out. Basically, it's like not a secret anymore that this is my life and it's a hellhole and that I need help. But also in my mind, I didn't understand what was about to happen with everything. So they went with my mom then. And this is just another part of the story of how DHS is just kind of twisted and does whatever they want. So they sent them with my mom out of state and never actually opened a case, but never actually told me what I was supposed to do to get them back. And so they went with my mom, and my mom was hateful at the time and knew that I wasn't well. And so she basically didn't let me see them, didn't tell me what was going on with them. I found out legally I still had the rights to them. And so I went up there multiple times to get them and bring them back home. And the DHS worker on the phone told the cops that I took there that I had an open DHS case in Oklahoma and that I wasn't supposed to take the kids. So the cops in St. Louis just let the kids stay with my mom because the DHS worker told them that there was a case down here and there wasn't. That was 3 months of my life that I was fighting my mom to see my kids and I didn't see them at all. I didn't even know what was going on with them. And I didn't have an open case. There was no case. There was no plan. There was nothing that said, this is what you're supposed to do. And then you get your kids back. It was literally in my mom's hands because this one DHS caseworker said that's what's going to happen. So I actually ended up having to hire a lawyer and bring them back down here. The judge told my mom that she basically kidnapped my kids at the expense of this DHS caseworker. So they gave me the kids back. I was not well still, but legally they were supposed to be with me. And so they told me they're going to start a case after this. Like, obviously, yes, you have the kids, but you're going to have to do things to show that you're a fit parent. And I was like, okay, fine. That day was really great when they came home because I hadn't seen them in 3 months. I didn't know what was going on. It was absolutely traumatic for me. And that day was great. And then the next day I was supposed to go up to DHS with the kids and start my thing and all of that. And I had their biological father and his family in my ear saying, they're just going to take them again if you bring them up there. They're just going to take them again if you bring them up there. So I got scared and I went out to the country and stayed at some friend's house with the kids, didn't show up to my thing. And that's when there was they called like an emergency removal and told me that I had to bring the kids up to the DHS and drop them off with somebody I knew at the time, just for overnight purposes. And that was a different feeling. There was no relief there. That was absolutely defeated. I felt absolutely empty, defeated. I had no fight left in me. I was just done. I just couldn't believe that was my life. I couldn't believe I had to hand them over again after I just was missing out on them for 3 months when I'm all that they've ever really known. Yeah, it was very traumatic. Very traumatic. I think that I went home and I stayed in bed for like 3 days because I just didn't have the fight in me at that point. And, their biological father didn't really care. He was back to just doing whatever. And I just felt alone and empty and hollow. And it was absolutely the worst I've ever felt in my life, for sure.
I can relate. So that's why I just got quiet. Because I can relate to it.
So on that second removal, that was an actual removal. The first time they really just kind of threw the kids at your mom.
Yeah.
So on that second removal, I'm assuming there was an actual court process where they brought you in and gave you a case plan.
Yeah, that was in March. And then I think my case opened in March. And that's when they gave me like the plan of like all the things that you have to do. It was domestic abuse related. So we each had separate plans to do whatever. When they brought us into court, we were both on separate sides. So that was like the first time that I was able to like disassociate myself with him. I know he's not going to do what he's supposed to be doing for any of this, but I'm going to do what I need to do. I got a counselor who was absolutely hands down the best part of this whole thing. She helped me through so many different things. And she was the first person that really saw me through what I was going through and like listened and like felt and just helped me deal with all of the things that I was doing. I had all my classes. I had like all the things that I had to do. And I knew one way or another, I was going to get them done. There was no question about it. Like at one point, I didn't have a vehicle. I didn't have any way to get to my places or whatever. I literally walked miles and miles across town to get where I needed to go, because that's the only thing I had to do. I was getting my kids back and that's it. I didn't have a job. I didn't have responsibilities. Like that was my job. Like, okay, they gave me a plan. Let me just do the checklist, like this is what I have to do. I got a caseworker. My first caseworker went on medical leave and I didn't actually ever meet her, my actual caseworker. So then I had to step in caseworker, and she was not a nice person. She was the one that judged me from day one. She was rude. She hung up on me. She wasn't helpful. She wouldn't answer any questions. That type of person is the type of person that should not be a caseworker in any way, shape, or form, because she was judgmental and she expected me to fail, and she was helping me fail by the way that she treated me. Thank God that my actual caseworker came back, because they were night and day difference. The fact that I had somebody that was supportive and helpful and believed in me and saw what I was doing made all the difference in the world, for sure.
You had one case manager that clearly treated you fairly poorly, one that was supportive. But in general, how did you feel you were treated as a mom? Were you treated with dignity? Do you feel like your experience was one where you felt judged?
It was kind of a journey. In the beginning, absolutely judged and looked down upon, and nobody really had any belief in what I was going to do or what I could do. And at the same time, most of these people, they didn't really know me. They didn't know what I was capable of. They didn't really know how I felt about my life. They didn't know how I felt about my kids. All they saw was what was on paper, and this is the situation I was in. So they didn't know me. They didn't have any desire to know me. They just kind of boxed me up into that person. But as time went on, I showed up for everything. I never missed a visit. I walked to whatever I had to walk to. I was very adamant about what I was doing. I saw slowly over time other people start to think, oh, well, maybe she is going to actually do what she needs to do. And that was a process. I mean, my case was 21 months from the start. It was definitely over time. I could have very easily let that hold me back or hold me down. But I decided I knew what I was going to do, and I knew how hard I was going to work for it, and that nothing else was going to get in my way. And so I just had to shrug that off. There was no control over that. I had to get humble in myself. I had to understand where I had gotten. I had to understand that these people don't know me. They don't know what I'm capable of. Yeah. Over time, I proved myself. Basically, you have to prove yourself.
When Mac's kids first came to my house, multiple people called me that were involved with the case. And they're like, don't get involved with this mom. Like, she's such a problem. Like, what do you expect from someone who is in active addiction and you just took their kids?
It was a mess.
Yeah. So they were like, she yells at everybody, keep your distance. And I'm like, I think I'm going to make my own choice up. And I'm glad I did, because throughout her case plan, even till now, she has people who still feel that way about her. I'm glad that quite a few of us were unable to be blinded by that, because we could see who she was and what she was going to do. Your story that you have told us thus far sounds very much like you hit the ground running. Is that the case? Like, when the kids were removed, you were immediately like, I'm just going to do whatever I need to do?
When I finally left the house that I was, where he was, is what jump started me. So my case started in March. And I finally escaped. I jumped out of our second story window and had a brawl with him in the front yard. And he was shoving rocks in my mouth and trying to make me stop screaming, and like literally trying to pull me back into the house by my hair. And there was one instant that was just like a very short amount of time in between him being on top of me and trying to pull me off the fence, that this girl rode by on her bike. She was like 9 or 10 years old, and we lived in like an industrial park. So there was like not really houses, but like way down the street. She just happened to be riding by right then. And the second he saw her see him, he got off of me just for a second, just long enough for me to hop over the fence, run to her. She had a cell phone on her, and I called the cops. That was the end. That was in July. And then I got a protective order. And that was like where things were really able to kick off. From March, when my case opened, until July, though, they were very slow, because I was basically trapped in that house with him, with no car, no money, nothing of my own. Like, I was able to get to all my things because they were important to me. And for whatever reason, he didn't try to control me over those. I did go to all my counseling and all my classes and stuff, but I wasn't able to really buckle down. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a place of my own. I didn't have those things that you need to really get going, but I was doing all of my classes. July 31st of 2017 was the day I jumped out of the window. And that's whenever the protective order was placed. And that was the only reason that he ever stayed away from me. And then that was in July. And then come September. So from the end of July to the end of September, that's when I had overnight supervised visitation when my mom came down. Everything moved really quickly after I had gotten out of the place that I was. But I had been working through my counselor. I had been kind of playing off that I was clean and sober when I wasn't. But I had gone through my counselor. I was doing the classes, the domestic abuse classes, the parenting classes, court ordered stuff. Like I was doing everything. Then once I got out of there, things really snowballed for the best, I guess. I was able to really do what I needed to do.
Did you trust where your boys went at first? At first, I wasn't. And I was like, what if they don't know what they're doing with my kid? And like, what if they don't know what to feed him and my kid's not eating? I didn't trust her at first.
The first place that they went to, I did know her very well. And so I trusted her. She was actually somebody that watched them on like overnights and stuff sometimes for me to give me a break. It's weird, but that's actually their biological father's ex-wife. So I knew her, but the boys are native. They're Cherokee Indian. And whenever there's Indian children, the native court gets involved. And so part of what the tribe requires is that they go to a native home if they're in the system like that. So they moved over to a couple who is also technically related to their biological father. Bobby and Brittany is where they went, and Bobby is his cousin. But these are people that I had never met. And I didn't know them. I didn't trust him, and I didn't trust his family that I knew. And so in my mind, these people were not it. No, I didn't trust them. I didn't know them. I didn't know anything about them. I just knew that the Cherokees wanted to put him somewhere that they felt comfortable. Yeah, no, I didn't. I sent Brittany a message that night, and I was like, I know you don't know me, but I heard that the boys are moving over to your house now. And I don't know that you can tell me anything, but I'm just letting you know that I'm here. This is my number, and I love them, and I'm doing what I need to do. And I just want to know that they're safe. And she didn't even message me back that night. I think the next day she messaged me back. She said they're safe and they're here. And that was like the beginning of us having a relationship, which has blossomed into something very, very special to me. Well, to all of us. Yeah.
Your boys were placed together, right? They were never separated. And they were just
correct.
And they were just in the two placements?
Yes.
Until they came home?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with your boys' foster parents?
Most of the time people message me and they're like, I wish we had this relationship with our bio parents or whatever. And it's really cool that you guys have that too. It's weird because me and Brittany, we still see each other all the time, whereas she's actually one of my best friends. Absolutely. The boys still go stay over there on the weekends. And like, we just like share kids, and it's really, really a special thing that we've created. And we just had this conversation the other night, which is weird because we don't really talk about it too much. We haven't talked, but she knows that I'm sharing more about my story, and the world just loves her. And she's like, I don't get it. I just did what I was supposed to do, or what I felt like was right. And I was like, yeah, but that's the point. Like, you just did what was right. And there's plenty of people out there doing what's right, but foster care is given such a bad name. And she told me she doubted me from the beginning. She was like, I didn't really know what to think of you. And I was like, we'll see. She's like, I was really hoping you were going to get it together because I did not want 4 kids. And I was like, yeah, I hear you on that. And she was like, but then when I found out you were walking to your appointments and you had showed up for the boys and you were doing this and that, she said, I was like, maybe she is going to do what she needs to do. Yeah. And that was really enlightening for me. And so she was very supportive. She actually helped me know how to be a better mom back then. And even now she still does. I obviously was lost, and she was very helpful. She's just kind and patient and super great with the kids. And they're like our best friends now. Her husband, Bobby, is super close with my husband, Sean. We actually all went on a family vacation to Florida together last year. Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing that I'm super grateful for. Yeah, it's kind of wild thinking about where our story started and where we are now.
Well, next time you guys go to Florida, you got to come and hang out with me and Mac. So you had a case plan. You said 21 months, right?
Yeah.
You also did mention inpatient rehab. Was that part of your case plan or something you decided to do?
I've been to multiple rehabs, but none of that was actually part of my case plan. My case plan, I did have to go. The counseling was part of like a drug rehabilitation sort of thing. It wasn't technically outpatient therapy. It was like based around substance abuse. But I had been to plenty of rehabs in my life, and I knew all the things. I knew all the things that they teach. I knew what I needed to implement. I just had never implemented them. That's actually how I fooled everybody into thinking I was not using when I still was. I had that CTI stuff, which is where my counselor was. I had parenting classes. I had domestic abuse classes. I had NA meetings to go to. I had to get a job. I had to have a house, a safe place. I had to have food in the house. I did obviously the visitations and stuff. The kids had therapy. Yeah, I think that's it.
As part of your case plan, you did not do any inpatient rehab, but you had been in the past. Do you feel like your experience in the past with rehab gave you the tools that you needed to get clean, or do you think it would have happened regardless?
I know that all the rehabs played a huge role in me being able to get clean and stay clean. And that's basically what all rehab is teaching you tools to deal with how you live your life. I'm a firm believer in rehab as long as you want it. I know that it's solid for somebody that actually wants to get better. If they apply the tools that are there, you can get well and you can live a happier, healthier life. And I just used those things when I got clean. You know, they had always been in my mind. When you go to rehab and then you don't stay clean and you go back out, like those things that you know you're supposed to be doing always stay in the back of your mind, even while you're out doing all the things you're not supposed to be doing. It's almost like a weird guilt sort of thing that like, if I didn't have this knowledge, then I wouldn't feel so bad about what I'm doing. I am doing what I'm doing. So it's just like kind of a spiral there.
I've heard after you go into rehab and then you come out and you relapse, that it's 10 times worse because you're like beating yourself up about it. Like, you're like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm doing it anyways.
Yeah. I lived in that state for a long time.
You beat yourself up.
Yeah. Mac, the only time you went to rehab was when you went for inpatient, right? For your case plan?
The judge made me.
But you had never been before, right?
No, never been before. So that's why it was so scary. That's why whenever they're like, you're going inpatient, I'm like, I'm doing what?
Yeah.
It's scary thinking about it, but ultimately it's actually like the safest place you can be. And I actually really enjoyed all the rehabs I was in for that reason, because it was safe. You didn't have to think about what you were doing. You got the chance to be clean and stay clean because there was no, I mean, in some places there's access to drugs, but you were safe there. And so like, I actually really enjoyed being in rehab. It was leaving that was scary.
I joke about it and I'm like, somebody take my phone away again, take all my responsibilities away and put me back in rehab for a little bit. I need the vacation.
Yeah.
And actually, Jackie, your story taught me a lot because I've always wondered, what is it about rehab that is what helps people get clean? Is it because you're just separating them from the things that are tempting, or is it because of what you learn in there? So I think based on what you're telling me, obviously both of them have a purpose and help. However, the fact that you were able to get clean using the tools that you learned there really speaks a lot to the benefit of rehab, even outside of just separating you from access.
Yeah, for sure. It's really a mixture of both. It's the tools that you have to apply in your outside life, but keeping you away from the access and like just putting you in a safe bubble allows you the time to really figure yourself out. Like it's not very long, 30 days is not long, but once you actually detox your body from all the things, you get to feel yourself, you get to think for yourself, you get to experience life as a sober person, which is absolutely so different from out there just consistently using. You get to kind of know yourself, but then at the same time, you have all these things coming up that make you want to use again because you're not numbing yourself anymore. That's when you feel like that anxious overwhelm. That's when you use the tools and kind of process all the things that they're telling you and really break down what's going on internally. And then once you do that in rehab, it's like you can't really forget that stuff. Like it doesn't just go out of your brain. It stays, especially if you have like a good counselor, like a good program that teaches you something about yourself. That stuff doesn't leave. It stays, even if you start using again, and then it will still be there. That's what happened to me. It was still there when I finally got clean, like all the things about me that I was running from and had to deal with and all of that.
Did you believe while you were working your case plan that you were going to be successful?
So that's actually, I mean, obviously I did, otherwise it wouldn't have happened. But in the beginning, it was like very, very minimal. And it wasn't so much like, I know how I'm going to get through this. It was just, I got rid of the how. And I literally in my brain was just kept the image and the picture of the three of us being somewhere safe and happy and healthy together, and like kept my vision on that. And like, that's what I coach people on now, even is that like, you have to have a vision for where you want your life to go, or you're never going to know which steps to take to get there. And I think about all that now when I tell people that's exactly how I got out of the hole that I was. I had no idea how I was going to do it, even though they gave me a step-by-step plan. All of that's way overwhelming to look at. In my mind and in my heart, I felt myself in that place where we were happy and healthy and things were better and didn't have all the trauma and all the things. I mean, I knew how to put one foot in front of the other, and that's what I did. And there was probably like a turning point somewhere in there. And at some point, it'll probably come back to me when I really start to allow myself to remember all the things. But there was probably like a turning point from like one moment where it was like, wow, okay, I think I'm really going to do this. And then from there on out, that belief is just strong and healthy and thriving. And that's what keeps you going. And I believe fully that's why, the reunification process is what it is, why it's such a process, because you don't feel that overnight. You don't get that belief. You don't get that ability, overnight or in a week or in 2 weeks. It takes some time, especially if you come from somewhere as broken as I was.
If you could point to one thing, what do you think it was that got you through this whole process, considering all the trauma that is related to this between your relationship that had domestic violence and dealing with not having your kids with you?
Thinking about a life that I was living where my kids weren't with me was like not something I could even process in my head. It's like something that I guess I blocked out because it just wasn't even an option. And that drive was always there. I like being a mom. I'm nurturing as a person. I like being a mom. And so in my mind, I knew I was always going to be a mom. And then here I was a mom, but my kids weren't with me. And I was like totally failing. And I was like, this is not who I am. Even if I didn't know who I actually was, I knew that was not who I was. I think it was just that fight, like that actual brawl fight of like, that's not going to be my story. And I'm stubborn. I'm like just really stubborn and hard headed. And that kind of helped in that sense, I guess, like so stubborn that that's not going to be my story. So whatever I have to do, I'm doing it.
That's awesome.
I was going to say the same thing. That's awesome. I want to be like you, Jackie.
It's been a wild ride to get where I am now. I love who I am now and I love who I'm becoming. And I love being able to help and share that with other people and inspire them to do the same thing. But it has been a hell of a ride. And my mom, my poor mom, I tell her all the time, I'm like, I am sorry for the things that I put you through. I am sorry.
What was reunification like when you went through it?
Yeah, so it was just supervised visitations for a long time. And then in September, I got supervised overnight visitation for a couple months. Like such a big moment for me. My mom came down from St. Louis and it was like this time, it was like September of that year. And the boys came and I had my own place. We had like this 2-room little townhouse thing. I was just ecstatic. I just couldn't believe that they were going to be where I was. And I got to hold them and kiss them and love them like 24 hours a day for like, it was like 4 days. I think my mom stayed down here and we painted pumpkins and we just like did family life things. And it was like such a successful feeling, like such a damn, I did this, like it was really big. Yeah, that was really, really big for me. That was in September. Then they were home in January, but only half the week. So they were with me unsupervised from like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then a little bit of Sunday, they would go back to Bobby and Brittany's. And so like, it was like a transition, not just all of a sudden full time there. They were all by myself, like taking care of 2 kids when I had them for so long, because like you said, it was a lot. It was, getting back into it was definitely a lot. And so the transition was really nice. And then it was just kind of, that big aha moment was the first time that I got them to stay overnight. It didn't matter that my mom was there. It was basically unsupervised for me anyway, in my mind, because it was my mom. And that was the big moment, man. That was when I was like, damn, I did this and I'm doing this and they're going to be home. And this is it. It was a long time and a lot of work built up to that point. And then when they came home for good, it was like, okay, I'm ready. Like, this is it. The case is going to be closed and we're good. We're just going to keep on keeping on. And I'm so excited to just get that part of my chapter closed. And now here I am opening it over and over and over again.
What's it been like since reunification?
I mean, that was like 6 years ago. So now it's really different than it was in the beginning. I definitely had to get used to parenting again 24/7. I have enjoyed and appreciated the moments, no matter how stressful or chaotic or messy or just like tired they are. I appreciate all the moments so much more. And I think I always will, had I not gone through what I've gone through. Every single moment. Absolutely. Like I get stressed out and kids are a lot and it's a lot sometimes. But even in those moments, like the hardest moments, I'm still so grateful that I'm able and I have the opportunity to be in this place versus the other way that my story could have gone, which would have been totally different. And so I think I'll always have that extra layer of gratitude compared to somebody that has not almost lost everything. I know I could have, and I didn't.
What challenges have you had to overcome since reunification? What kind of things have you experienced where you've had to learn a different way of responding?
Yeah, I mean, life still happens even after big things happen. I've been very fortunate that in these last 6 years that I haven't had a whole lot of things to deal with. I say that I went through PTSD after all of this from the abusive relationship. I had to go through a year and a half of court with him for the case against me that he prolonged. And finally, because I didn't give up and I didn't cave in, he actually is in prison because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. That whole situation was very traumatizing and very reliving it over and over and over again. But I never had the desire to really use. I haven't really ever had that desire. Once I hit 5 years clean and sober, seeing other people drinking alcohol actually started to affect me, which is strange, I guess. I just always keep myself away from it. And then, in situations where there are people drinking, I could realize that it was affecting me mentally. And so I've made a conscious effort and choice to separate myself from those places or those people, or just being aware of that inkling in the back of my head. Because the thing about addiction is that what I know already to be true, but when I feel it come up in me is that it's always right there, just waiting to come back, just ready to just rage. It's I'm not recovered. I'm just ongoing in recovery. And it's just something that I have to remember and live with and deal with forever. And some people, like my husband, doesn't like to refer to himself as an addict, but I have to refer to myself as an addict. Otherwise, when my addictive behavior comes up, I'll question myself, why am I feeling this way? Why am I doing this? Well, it's because I have that tendency and I have that addictness inside me, and coming to terms with that is a journey. At some point it's I want to be normal. I want to be just somebody that can just hang out and do what other people are doing and not have a problem with it. And it's just not my thing. It's not going to be something I'm ever able to do. And so there's a battle there between, do I really even want that? Or am I just mad? There's something that I can't do if I wanted to do it. So that's been an ongoing thing.
I understand where you're coming from with that too. Cause it's I want to do that, but do I really want to do that? No, I just want to do it because someone else is doing it.
Yeah. And I don't like to be told that I can't do something. So there's that.
At what age were your boys when they were removed?
16 months. We spent their second birthday in the DHS visitation room. That was heartbreaking. Yeah.
They were 16 months. When they came out, I'm going to do math. I'm not actually going to do math. So they were almost 4, right?
Yeah, they had just turned 3. Yeah, they were 3 and a little bit, I think.
Okay. It's not a day to do math. What services do you think the community could create to help people who were in your situation before removal became necessary?
Honestly, there probably are some services that are here. I just wasn't aware of them. I just didn't know anything about them. I do see a lot of times when I go into a QT out in Tulsa, I'll see the little sign on the back that of the door that says if you're in a dangerous situation or a domestic abuse relationship, here's a phone number you can call. That's so small and so simple, but that's a place that's safe, that you're actually away from them, that you could get that phone number and keep it for a different time. That's so small. But when I see that, it triggers me because I'm if I would have seen something like that back then, I would have at least had a number or something to call. Honestly, it's hard because the places that you have to go, even a domestic violence shelter and stuff would be great, but it goes further than that, just needing one place to go overnight. Because most of the time when you're in a situation like that, you don't have belongings, you don't have a car, you don't have a phone, you don't have anything that can sustain you for any amount of time, especially if you have kids. So it's okay, you could go to a domestic abuse shelter for how long? And then what? I don't really know what resources would be available or what there could be. That's what I think, though, for domestic abuse. I know that there's shelters for addiction recovery and overnight places and even a rehab. Honestly, if there was a rehab for people that are in domestic violence situations, because it takes time and it's post-traumatic stress and it's just so many things, especially with kids. And that's usually why people don't leave situations like that. It's become impossible for them to leave or for them to survive outside of it. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking. I think one of the things that you said that's really bugging me, you shared that this all kind of was spurred on by this domestic violence situation where everybody there knew you were in danger. And obviously the kids were in danger. I mean, the way that you described it, it was very violent. Everybody who works with people who are in domestic violence relationships knows that women feel trapped and feel like they can't leave. So I guess the thing that surprises me is why someone didn't kind of encourage you to go to, and maybe in your area, it's different. We really have a great place locally where women can go with their children to get out of a domestic violence relationship where they could live there for like months. My very first case that I was very excited I was able to reunify those kids with their mom. She lived in the domestic violence shelter very close towards like the end of the case. They kind of had services there as well. So I really feel like things like that are so important. And giving someone a place to sleep for a night is not going to help someone who's in a domestic violence relationship where they feel trapped, especially where kids are involved. If there were places like that where you lived, why wouldn't someone have tried to get you into one right away? The great thing is that regardless of anybody helping you in that way, your inner strength, what you were able to pull together from the resources provided to you in the past, you were able to do this, but not all people are able to do that.
Yeah.
I see women go back over and over to these relationships to the detriment of their family, even to the point where they lose their rights. And it's heartbreaking to see that because they're a victim in this situation as well. And I just wish there were more ways that we can help women who feel trapped in that way. And it just really bugs me that like it was very clear from the start of your story that this was domestic violence and nobody really had a great solution to offer you.
Yeah, actually, I've never even thought about it that way. But as you were talking, I was like, yeah, no, I didn't have a suggestion or there was no like, you could go here. It was kind of like, let us know when you find somewhere to go. I don't think that I don't know if there are places like that here, but nobody offered it to me. I wouldn't have known about it. If there was some place like that, surely they would offer it to me. But yeah, there wasn't any steps to help me in that area. It was kind of like, yeah, I was still stuck over there for 4 months before I just went through that traumatic experience of jumping out of the second story window to get away from him. The only reason that situation came up was just because I had made a decision in my heart and in my mind, like I am done, whatever it takes. I am not going back in that house. And that took a ridiculous amount of strength and will and determination. I know that not everybody has the ability to do that in that sort of situation. And that was me too. I left multiple times and then came back, leaving and coming back, leaving and coming back, because that's just the way it happens. And yeah, it's frustrating because people don't understand what it really means to be in a domestic abusive relationship. They think it just means, oh, they hit me once or twice and then, well, why don't you just leave? And it's like, there's so many more layers to that than just, why don't you just leave? It's not something you can relate to or really understand unless you've been connected to it. And so, just education on what that really means is really important. I guess that is a place I say that I'm an open book and I'm comfortable talking about things. With the domestic abuse side, it's like the side that I have not shared about so much on social media. And I think I have a lot of just feelings and things I need to process and work through so that I can shed light on that as well. Like that is something I would like to share with people about because it's important and most people don't understand.
I really do see a lot of cases that are related to domestic violence. So you would think that more effort would be put towards finding solutions in that way and that people would just have more compassion for women who are in that situation. And the first thing I'm thinking of when they took your kids to your mom's is why didn't they offer like, hey, if you leave him, you could go with your mom with the boys, like why wasn't that an option instead of like painting you as the bad guy? Like, they could have gotten you out of that relationship in that moment when you jumped out of the window and he's beating you. You could have died.
Yeah.
You could have died in that moment. And that would have been the end of the story for your boys and their mom. And that could have been prevented if they could have given you support in getting out of that relationship sooner.
Yeah.
So maybe there are more solutions that could be offered to women who are in that situation because not everybody can do what you did. A lot of those stories don't end as positively as yours did.
What could have been more improved in the foster care system to help parents reunify more? Personally, for me, it was the support system. I personally need that support. Like I need someone to stand behind me. Like I have Jack over here, when I'm saying I can't do it, Jack's behind me saying, yes, you can. Let's go.
Yeah, I guess that's the first thing that I was thinking would be support and yeah, just support in the situation without judgment or without expectations, I guess, but just like more support for the bio parent for sure. I don't know what that looks like, but definitely more support for the bio parent instead of like feeling like so isolated.
So most, and I will say from my experience, this is true, but most parents get reunified and don't look back. A lot of parents tend to not want to remember this time. It is amazing for someone who's been through the experience that both of you have been through to take what you've been through, which was challenging and traumatic for yourself, and turn it into a learning experience for someone else. Jackie, you've definitely been doing that on your social media accounts. Can you tell us what made you want to do that? Well, what was it that made you go, hey, I'm going to take this and I'm going to help other people with it?
Actually a really good question, and it's a strange answer. So my best friend now, so she was just some girl that I found on the internet. She owns a boutique and she was doing a network marketing company where she was selling skincare and makeup, and she was doing live videos. I was working at Chili's at the time, and I was like, I am tired of working at Chili's. I want to find something else. And so I was like, I think I'm going to try this network marketing thing. Like, she just goes online, does her makeup online, and then sells it. I was like, I can do that. We're going to try it, which is really random and weird for me to do because it was just so out of character for me. But something in me was like, you should probably try this. And I was like, okay, let's try it. So I did. And just that was in 2020. And she found out that I was in recovery. And she actually had a cousin of hers who was dealing with addiction hardcore. And then he actually ended up committing suicide shortly after we met. She's the one who really made me see like, people don't normally come back from what you came back from, Jackie. And not only just the recovery stuff, but then when she started to find out about the abusive relationship and the foster care stuff, she was like blown away, kind of. She was like, you have to share, like, you have to tell people about this. And I was so reluctant. I was like, no, I'm not going to share that on social media. And I started to share a little bit because people had known that I was dealing with addiction and people knew that I was like just wild and crazy and like living chaotically. And so I just started opening up about the addiction side of things. And there was just something in me that was like, just do it. Just share and be vulnerable. And at this point, it was like, what do I have to lose? I know there's people out there struggling with recovery. I was very uncomfortable sharing about the foster care stuff. But then when I did start sharing about it and people were coming out and saying like, you're helping me so much. Thank you for sharing about this. Like you're inspiring me. That was like the side of things that I never expected or really envisioned. And then as they were saying that, I was like, well, I can't stop now. I just kept sharing. And now it's gotten to be bigger. And now I've actually started sharing more of Sean's story as well. And our hope is to like get in front of more people besides just social media, maybe doing speaking for, kids or places like jails or rehabs or anything really inspirational that we can share that, you can come back from anything, no matter where you're at, like you can come back from it. And like, that's become my new vision for myself. Like I talk about vision all the time. And that's kind of where I see myself, even though it scares me. It's like, I'm just going to go for it. Like it's a bigger thing than me. So
what's one positive thing that you can pull from the foster care experience?
Well, my relationship with Bobby and Brittany, for sure, hands down, that's one of the best things. That's absolutely one of the best things. And just feeling like, damn, I did that. Being proud of myself. Like when I think about anything that I face now, it's like, really, is it that big of a deal? Like, look what you already did. If I can do that, I can do anything.
I always tease Mac about that when she's struggling with something or stressed about something. I'm like, but at least you're not doing that. Like, we're doing great,
Yeah. That's for sure.
I'll be stressed out about something so small. She'll be like, Jesse, you're sober. It's okay. We can make it through.
Yep. Sometimes you got to just appreciate the little things like that. And then you can kind of laugh it off and be like, well, it's true though. Yeah.
If there was one thing that you could say to parents who are currently in the dependency system and trying to get through it, what would you want them to know?
If you have that feeling inside of you that's telling you you can do this, even if it's the smallest amount of you can do this that you could possibly imagine, like just fuel off of that and keep looking forward. Keep the vision of holding your kids and keeping your kids and being in a safe place with them. Keep that at the forefront of your mind and don't look at the big picture. Just do the next step in front of you. Just take that next step. Find the support that you need and get humble and just do what you need to do in order to get well. Nothing's going to feel as good as getting through this and getting to that place that you have your kids and that you climb that mountain.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on social. We hope that you join us again next time and keep on fostering the future.